keep on talking about is something called sinusoidal signals can be used to decompose waveforms. Decompose in the sense, what do you mean by decompose?
Yeah, decompose.
Decompose. What do you mean by decompose? You are splitting into number of sine signals. Okay, so you are trying to generate a waveform, okay, with only sine components. Okay, that's what decomposition is called. Decomposition. You are splitting it. Okay, into its constituent parts. For example, a square waveform can be represented with sine waveforms, but with one sine it is not feasible. So you go in for harmonics. Okay, so you add omega naught t. Okay, this 2 omega naught t, 3 omega naught t. You add all those signals with the amplitude and the corresponding phase shift. Finally, you will end up in a signal something like a square waveform. So this is a kind of square waveform you ended up in. So this is what we learned. Then we also discussed something related to this idea. In fact, this kind of decomposition, you call it this kind of ideas as you are trying to represent. Trying to represent a signal using basis signal. Basis signals or vectors. Okay, basis vectors. Basis is a big concept. Okay, in today's class I will be showing some, throwing some light in this domain. Okay, so try to catch up this concept. If you have difficulty, you can try to discuss with me afterwards. Okay, so after the class, you send me queries. Okay, we will discuss it again in the next class. Okay, right now just try to put some, show some kind of curiosity as well as attention is required from you. Okay, curiosity and attention is required from you. So try to concentrate in today's class. I think it's quite difficult for you by 2 o'clock, but still the today's class is quite important from my end. Okay, from my end I am trying to convey to you. Okay, so the transformation technique we learned about the time. We need to talk about something called time domain to frequency domain transformation. I said in today's class we'll see how this particular expression has really emerged. Okay, this is the Laplace transformation domain. Okay, f of t equal minus st. So what is this f equal minus st signifies? Why do we need to do this? What you are really conveying through this? Okay, that we will try to understand by putting some effort in the mathematics behind it. Okay, so we also learned about the basics of sine, cosine waveforms, rational numbers, irrational numbers. You see, this is something only a glimpse I am providing. Okay, a glimpse of the mathematics, not the complete course. Okay, so you need to go and refer to gain more clarity as well as more insights. Mathematics, it's not a mathematics class, so, but anyway, understanding maths is quite important, so you need to put some effort. So what is sine theta, what is cosine theta, tan theta, how to represent it, how to view it from a unit circle. Okay, so when the angle changes, what happens? For a unit circle, the horizontal axis is the cosine, the vertical axis is the corresponding sine and cosine. Don't forget this. Okay, so you'll be referring to this again and again in this course. So it's a kind of representation for theta. Okay, for sine you get the full vertical axis. You get cos 0 is 1, sine 0 is 0. Okay, this point sine 0 is 0. So you should be in a position to clearly visualize all this. What happens when the vector starts moving? Okay, for different angles, what do you get as sine and cosine values for various theta values? Okay, so you should remember this. So then we learned about radians to degree conversions. We also learned about something called the complex exponentials. Okay, wherein we discuss something like e power x, cos x, sin x, and the corresponding series. And the key point that I asked you to remember is these signals e power x, cos x, sin x can be represented in terms of series also. That's a key point I told you. I hope you can recall them. Okay, so we'll go through these notes again and try to refer to some good mathematical books also to gain more clarity over this. This part is important. So then we also discussed the importance of complex numbers. Okay, the complex numbers, they play a role in signals and DSP and as well as control systems. image processing and all. Okay, so many subjects connected to this. So good understanding about complex numbers and the complex theory behind analysis behind it. Analysis is a big thing. Okay, complex analysis, real analysis at the postgraduate level will be doing it. But some basic operations, okay, using this complex numbers, it's sufficient for this particular course. Okay, you should know what to take the conjugate, and you should know how to add two numbers, a plus b, b minus a when they are complex. Okay, a b, a star, b is conjugate, a by b, all those things. Then we also learned about something like the complex number in the Cartesian coordinate. Okay, Cartesian coordinate and then polar coordinates. Okay, you should know this. You should know how to transform from one domain to another domain comfortably. Okay, so you should get the values and then proceed. Okay, so then we also discuss something related to the cosine waveform, sine waveform as in the complex plane. Okay, so in the complex a plus jd plane, you can represent the cos theta as the real part of z because this is the axis. Okay, real part. Because the complex plane when you are drawing is a real part, this is imaginary part. So naturally, cosine is related to real. Okay, real of z divided by the modulus. The modulus of z. This is the magnitude. Okay, this is a Pythagoras theorem. We employ and get the magnitude. So, but here in this case, what do you get? You get a square plus b square. Real part square, imaginary part square. Okay, so that's enough. Okay, that is this. This is what we learned. So a b. Okay, so again go through it. Get a clarity on this. So r theta you can represent it in the form of polar form also. And then we also discussed about j theta. So now we have introduced j theta. It's a purely imaginary number. So cos theta you can write it like this. Instead of cos x, in fact I put theta. So then later on we can move on to cos omega t, and then e power j omega t. Okay, e power j omega t. What is that? Cos theta is like this. In the form of series you can write like this. Sin theta you know how to write. This is the form for sin theta. Multiply by j. So then you add both cos theta plus j sin theta, you'll be getting the e power j theta. You know e power x, how to represent it. With the x replacing j theta, you are going to get the summation series like this. Okay, the summation series is like this. So then you add, okay, you add e power j theta, e power j theta, you'll be getting as cos theta plus j sin theta. Two series added together. So this proof is important. And then e power minus j theta is cos theta minus j sin theta, because sin minus theta is what? Minus sin theta. Why? Because we can clearly see it. Okay, so minus theta is here. Okay, this is a minus angle, theta minus angle. So in that naturally cos theta will be positive, the same value, but sin theta becomes negative. This y axis, y intercept. You can see it clearly. Sin theta is negative, cos theta is positive. So naturally, this is going to be e power minus j theta is going to be cos theta minus j sin theta. That's what we are going to get. Cos theta is equal to e power j theta plus e power minus j theta divided by 2. So it's more like cos theta is generated by two rotating faces. Can you see it clearly? One is e power j theta, is the theta. Another one is e power minus j theta. Both are rotating, and both these vectors contribute half of its energy to create the cos theta. Okay, so that's the idea of cos theta. Two rotating vectors. Rotating vectors. Okay, so this is a e power j theta, this is e power minus j theta. Two rotating vectors trying to create this cos theta. So you will understand it. So why I am saying it is rotating? Can somebody tell me why it should rotate? Rotating vectors. Why it should rotate in order to get this cos theta? What's the answer for it? Anybody from the class? Why it should rotate in order to create the cos theta? Think of this is a sin theta. If you want to create cos theta, if you want to create, what you need to do? Should start at theta, but let us put for theta time t. Okay, then this is time t. Time t equal to 0, cos is equal to what? This is your angle. Okay, this is t. T equal to 0. So this point, cos is maximum. Okay, then the vector has to move. Then only you can create the waveform. Like this. It is the cos theta. So at every point you can should clearly visibly you can see that at 90 degree pi by 2 the value is 0 here cos. This is reaching this point. Then my at 180 degree this is half. Okay, this point is this is what? This point. Okay, I'm talking about this regions. This is minus pi. Minus pi is minus 1. Okay, negative of minus 1. Then it goes to 0 again, this point. Then it goes to maximum, this point, 2 pi. So one full revolution, always remember, if the vector rotates full revolution, you are going to get one full cos theta. If it is going to rotate in 1 second, okay, what's the corresponding frequency? 1 cycles per second, or otherwise you can say 2 pi radians. It takes only 1 second for the vector to reach, start from t equal to 0 to again come back to t equal to this point 2 pi. So circumference of the circle is 2 pi now. So it's going to take, if it's going to take only 1 second for this, doing this, then the frequency is 2 pi radians, or the frequency in cycles is 1 cycle per second. What's the time period then? Time period is then what? 2 pi by time t. That's the time period. That's the frequency. Okay. So then time period is equal to what? 1 second. Okay. In order to get this, time period is equal to 1 second. So in 1 second, it covers 2 pi radians. Okay. So that's the time period. So all right. So what else we learned? We also learned about LTI systems, wherein when we give A cos omega t plus pi 1 as input, you get B cos omega t plus pi 2 as output. Okay. So this A and B, there will be a change, and this frequency will not change at all. For all LTI linear time invariant system, this is a property. We will be interested in exploiting the properties of sine waveforms only for this this property. This is particular powerful property. Okay, so the question before you is, why all LTI systems, they give only sine output, sinusoidal output, when you give sine input? Any reason? Can you guess?
It retains its waveform.
Why? Is there some reason, specific property of LTI system that supports it?
Sir, base period, sir.
Huh? Base period.
Base period.
What do you mean by it?
It's a fundamental period, sir. After the multiplying, it has frequency constant.
Okay. So no, but the key point is, the question to you is, if I give sine, forget about the frequency, I am getting the same sign out. So if I give a triangle, I may not be getting the same triangle output. I may get a square waveform or something like that. But if I give a sine, I am getting a sinus output. Only there is a change in phase shift and amplitude. Why is it so? Any fair guess? Any guess? Any guess? Okay. So the idea is very clear. LTI systems, whatever we are going to learn, they are governed by the dynamics, which can be modeled like a differential equations. Okay? Any differential equation, you know what is that? They are derivatives. There are derivatives and integrals involved in it. Nothing else. These two operations are linear, and the key point is, when you integrate or find out the differentiation of sine and cosine waveforms, you will always get the same pattern. Okay, you always get either sine or cosine, but slightly phase shift will be there. If I integrate sine, cosine, I will be getting phase shifted versions of it. That's all. So the key point is, the shape will be retained. Okay, always the same shape, but there will be a phase shift. That's all. There will be an amplitude change, there will be phase shift. So when you are dealing with differential equations to represent the dynamics of LTI systems, okay, the integrators and differentiators, they are going to play a role. And because of that, when you give sign as input, that will be operated by the integrators and the differentiators, and you are going to get the same sign output. But there will be change in, if I give cos, I may get sine. If I give sine, I may get cos. There will be some phase shift because of the operations of the integration and differentiation over the sine waveforms. Okay, is it clear? Read out. You understand the concept? What I'm saying? Can somebody repeat what I said right now? Can somebody repeat what I said right now? Yeah, correct, Chairman. Tell.
Sir, in LTI system, any signals input given is only converted into sine waveform. Because LTI system is modeled based on dynamics, which can be modeled using differential equations.
Very good.
In differential equation, either we differentiate or integrate sine or cosine, we will get either vice versa, both sine or cosine.
Yeah.
So we LTI system gives sine forms of any waveform.
Yeah, that's right. Very good. So cos theta, you know that cos omega t minus pi, I am going to get pi by 2, I am going to get sine theta. So from the thing itself very clearly you can see. Okay, this is cosine, this is sine. Therefore, if I shift to pi by 2, then I will be getting sine. Okay, if I shift by pi by 2, I will be getting sine. So that is why sine cos omega t minus pi by 2 is always sine theta. So naturally, that's what you are going to get. Now let us proceed ahead. In today's class, our focus is on finding out the mathematical part. Again, we are today's class also is more like a part 2 version. The mathematics behind signals. We will be using something called de Moivre's formula, okay, wherein you get cos theta plus j sin theta the whole power n. Power, okay, so it's a complex quantity. To the complex, you are taking the power. So cos n theta plus j sin n theta is the answer. Okay, so the proof and all is not required. If you want proof, you can go through it. But right now, just focus on this. This formula is important. And also we know that r e power j theta plus 2 pi k is equal to r equals j theta. Why? What is the answer? Our rotating vector is like this. This term is a real term, this is the imaginary term. This is cos theta, this is j sin theta. So e power j theta can be represented as, vector can be represented as two components. E power j theta is having two components. What is that? The magnitude part, r is r. If it is unit circle, r is equal to 1. And then the angle part. Angle part is equal to, see, in the angle part is a theta. Okay, the angle part is a theta. And this theta, in fact, it's having two components. The r can be represented in terms of two components. You see, cos theta is j sin theta. This part, okay, j sin theta. That's what e power j theta is. We know that. Okay, so e power j theta has having two components, cos theta plus j sin theta. Now, if this vector is going to rotate one full revolution, again it is going to come back to the same point. So naturally, any theta you start with, and if you are going to take 2 pi rotation, okay, 2 pi rotation, you are going to come back again to the same point. So naturally, r e power j theta plus 2 pi k, where k is any integer. K is an integer. K can be 1, 2, 3 like that. You give 1, you get 2 pi. You give 2, you get 4 pi. So again, you are going to come back again. So that's going to be r e power j theta. This is a key point. Now let us look for a proof of something called nth roots of unity of 1. This is something you'll be using it in the 4th unit called when you are learning DFT, introduction to DFT, and then you'll be learning it again in the next semester called DSP subject, digital signal processing. Okay, so the 4th unit you'll be using a bit, but in the next semester only you'll be using it. But this idea will be useful when you are learning something related to sampling theorem also. the third unit. Try to understand it. So for example, I can represent the 1, a real number 1, as a complex number by writing like this: 1 plus j omega, j 0. So this is a vector I'm talking about. Imaginary part is 0, but it's a real number. Okay, for all real numbers are complex. Keep that in mind. All real numbers, they can be written in the form of a complex form like this. So you can write the complex part equal to 0. So then, if z is a complex number and I am raising it to the roots, okay, power n, then what are all the roots of the complex number? Okay, if z is equal to 1 plus j0, nth root of it is going to be square root of n. Okay, second root is square root. Okay, so then I'm talking about nth root, 3, 4, 5, cubic root, fifth root, fourth root, fifth root, and all. So I'm looking at that for this particular complex number. So there are n unique solutions for this. Why? The magnitude part is 1. Okay, 1 plus j0, the magnitude part is 1. What are all the angles the one can have? It can start from here 0. Then it can go for one full revolution like this, or it can go for another revolution with negative angles, plus or minus 2 pi, plus or minus 4 pi. It goes on like that, like 2 pi k, with k being the integer part. Okay, the integer it can take. So the polar form of 1, then I can write like this. Polar form of 1 is nothing but the magnitude is 1 and the angle is e power j theta is 2 pi k. So because again and again I can come back here. Okay, 2 pi k. So k can be any integer. Okay, so this is the first thing we learned. Zn is equal to 1. Then this z is a complex number I said. So r e power j theta the whole power n is equal to 1 e power j 2 pi k. I can write immediately this. Here the r power n is nothing but this magnitude 1, and this e power j theta power n, theta n is nothing but e power j 2 pi k. Then r power n is equal to 1 and n theta is equal to what? 2 pi k, and immediately I can write the theta can be 2 pi by n k. So the solutions are complex numbers, the roots are complex numbers equal to z is equal to e power j 2 pi by n k. So you substitute for different values of k and see what's happening. So the magnitude is 1 for each of these roots. For each of these roots, the magnitude is 1. They fall under the unit circle, and as well as the angles are divided by what? 2 pi. You are fractioning it 2 pi by n times. If I divide it by 1, I'll be getting only 2 pi. If I divide it by 2, I will be getting 5. Okay, so you understand. So by n, I am dividing it. 2 pi, I am trying to divide it. So then z power n is equal to satisfying z power n. So the 6 roots of the particular formula is important. Okay, look at this. First root, the first time how I am computing, the magnitude is not a problem. Magnitude is 1, primarily because r is 1. Only the angle part we should know. So how it should look like, the roots in the complex plane for the 1. The first root, immediately you know, it is for k equal to 0 we start with. Totally first root, second root, third root, fourth root, fifth root, sixth root. There are 6 roots for this. You can have more number of roots also, but for 6 roots, let us try to work out. First one is what? E power j 2 pi k. How do you write? For k equal to 0, when you plug in here, you get e power 0. E power 0 is what? Cos 0 plus j sin 0. What is that? That is equal to 1. Okay, the first root is 1. What about second root? Put k equal to 1 here. So you will be getting e power j 2 pi by n is what? E power 1. Z1 is what you are interested in. Okay. So n is equal to, n is equal to, you are looking for n unique roots. So n is equal to 6. So 6 is a corresponding. So what do you get? E power j pi by 3. So substitute it. So cos pi by 3 plus j sin pi by 3, that's going to be 1 by 2 plus square root of 3 by 2 I. What's that angle? 60 degree. Okay. So somewhere around here, the second root. Okay. The third one, again k is equal to 2 is plug in. 2 if you plug in, what do you get? You get 4 pi by n, 4 pi by 6. That's going to be 2 pi by 3. That's going to be minus 1 by 2 plus square root of 3 by 2 I. Okay, the next one is minus 1. So this, what is this value? This is around 120 degree here. Fourth root, can you guess it? So you can see the different roots here lying on the unit circle. Okay, so is it of 5, 1, then this value and this one. These are all the 6 roots of the various angles. Okay, all these angles are divided by what? 2 pi by n, where n is equal to 6 roots, therefore 2 pi by 6. If I am going for 8 roots, I will be getting 8 such vectors. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. If I go for 12 roots, I get 12 such divisions. Okay, so easily you can visualize it. So this is called a nth root problem. In fact, this is a basic behind a very powerful algorithm, which in fact we'll be learning in DSP, called as fast Fourier transforms. Fast Fourier transforms. This you'll be learning in the next semester, but the basic comes from the Fourier transform, which you'll be learning in this semester. Okay, so again, this kind of ideas we'll be using. Okay, the roots of then look at this. So now let us switch gears and try to understand what exactly is a basis function. Basis function is all about how this kind of e power minus j omega t, e power j theta, okay, instead of theta I put omega t, how this kind of functions can be used to represent data. That's the focus of this class. So try to concentrate for another 20-30 minutes. Understanding this idea is quite important for getting a clear grasp of the subject, signals and systems. You should know why we are doing certain things. Okay, so for that only this mathematical insights are required. So now look at these two vectors, phi 0 and 0 minus 2. If I am interested in finding out this is, what is this, a column vector? Okay, so it's a 2 cross 1, this is 2 cross 1. So I would like to multiply these two. Okay, so phi 0, 0 minus 2. If I do that, what do you get? I'll be getting 0. Okay, this is 1 cross 2, this is 2 cross 1. So I'll be getting a number. So what is this? You call it as this kind of thing as inner product. Okay, inner product means is nothing but V transpose of x, two vectors. Okay, this is the inner product. So this you might have learned it. Okay, already in matrices and all those things you might have learned it. But the idea is, when the inner product is equal to 0, you should remember that they are mutually orthogonal. Those two vectors are mutually orthogonal. That means they are perpendicular to each other. So if I draw these two vectors, okay, if I draw these two vectors from a two-dimensional domain, so what I will be getting? So the first one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the x-axis, and it is lying on the y is equal to 0. Therefore, the first vector is 0. The second vector is 0 on the x-axis, minus 2 on the y-axis. 1, 2. Okay. So I will be getting this. So if you look at the corresponding angle between it, it is 90 degrees. So naturally, they are mutually orthogonal. So you should look at the vectors clearly. Okay, how to visualize the vector in two-dimensional space is an important engineering insight. Okay, you should develop the skill of visualizing vectors in a clear way. So now let us think about something called basis vector. So I am calling these two as they are mutually orthogonal two vectors, and I am calling it as basis vectors. What are they? These basis vectors, they are orthogonal. Okay, you may be pointing like this, 90 degree angle. And using these vectors, okay, I can represent other vectors that are there in the two-dimensional space, okay, as a linear combination of these vectors. The linear combination is a very important, powerful idea. Okay, now look at this. So how do you find out the norm or length of a vector? You know that very well. Okay, just you simply take V transpose V, take the square root of it. I'll be getting the length of the vector. For this case, what do I get? I get 1, 2, 3. I take inner product. This is 1, 2. I'll be getting 1 plus 4 plus 9. Okay, square root of it is going to be 14. Square root of. So that's the length of this vector. Which vector? This particular. So for finding out the norm, okay, Euclidean norm they call it. Euclidean norm. For finding out the norm of any vector or any vector when you draw like this, somebody is asking you what is the length of this vector or the norm of this vector. Two norm, they call it. Two norm of this vector. Then you have to put it like this. Then take the square root of the inner product of the same vector. V transpose V. Inner product. You take it. This is V transpose. This is V. You take it. You are going to get a number. For example, in this case, 14. You are getting. Take the square root of it. That's going to give you the inner what do you call the length of the vector. That's quite comfortable. If somebody is asking you the same thing for a complex number, okay, 1 plus 2j is 1. This is 2. 1 plus 2. This is real. This is imaginary. Same idea. Okay, V transpose V. But the only thing is you have to take the conjugate of the next vector, second vector. That's all. Okay, for example, in this case 1 plus 2j. Okay, so what do you get? One plus 2j. Okay, the first vector. Then 2 minus 3j. Second one, you put it in the row form. Then 1 plus 1 minus 2j. 2 plus 3j. If you do it, you get a number. Okay, so you can multiply each and everything, and you get a number like from this. So you get a single number after multiplying. Okay, how do you do it? 1 plus 2j multiplied by 1 minus 2j plus 2 minus 3j into 2 plus 3j. You can see when you multiply with the complex conjugate, automatically the imaginary part will vanish. Okay, you're going to get only one single final number at the end of it. So the same manner, if you look at the case 1, 0 and 0, 1, how the vector looks like, you know that very well. It's a very powerful idea. So,
sir?
Yeah.
For norm also we want to do square root, sir?
Yeah. Square root. Yeah, here also.
Okay.
Here also we will take square root. In order to find out the norm of this vector, a complex number, you have to take the inner product and then take the square. You get the, what you're going to get one number here. One real number you will get, that you're going to work out square root. That's all. Okay, that's the length of the vector. Both for real as well as complex. Keep that in mind. The same idea. But in the complex, only thing that you have to remember is you have to take the complex conjugate in order to multiply. The second vector, you have to take the complex conjugate. Okay, so that's the inner product idea, not the inner product, the norm idea. What about two different vectors like this V? The other one, if it is, for example, it is 5 plus some 2j, the second number is 0. This one can be 0 minus 2 plus 2j. If this is the case, what do you do? How do you take the inner product? Kumar? What do you take the inner product?
5 plus 2j, 0, sir.
Second one?
And minus 2 minus j, sir.
That's all. You have to take the conjugator. That's all. In order to take the inner product, simply you have to take the conjugator. That's all. That's quite
okay, sir.
Direct. Okay. Now,
sir.
If you look at this case, orthonormal basis. Okay. The first one is 1, 0. It is here. The second one is 0, 1. It is here. Now these two vectors, okay, they are orthogonal first of all. 90 degree. If you take the inner product, you are going to get 0, 0. If you take the inner product, you are going to get 0. That's quite obvious. See, simply you have to multiply. See, if you have two vectors like this, you don't take inner product, simply multiply this. That's all. The element by element, you multiply and add it. Multiply this to 1.0 plus 0.1. That's the inner product. You get 0. Okay, so this is orthogonal, definitely. But they are saying orthonormal. It's a very powerful idea in linear algebra. By creating orthonormal, scientists and engineers have come up with a lot of algorithms in signal processing, image processing, okay, control systems, okay, every domain, all novel algorithms, novel, what do you call, powerful algorithms, including FFT algorithm, as I said, signal, other algorithms like neural networks, machine learning. Everywhere, the concept of orthonormal basis they play an important role. Okay. What is orthonormal? Any fair guess? Anybody? Can you visualize what is orthonormal? Orthonormal, definitely. Ortho indicates orthogonal. Okay, vectors are orthogonal. But normal basis means it is normalized to the value 1. Okay, for example, if I take the length of this vector, it's going to be 1. Square root of 1 square plus 1 square, it's going to be 1. The length of this vectors, 2 vectors. Okay, these 2 vectors. If you take the vector, each vector, 1 by 1, take the, this is unit vector, therefore value is 1. This is also unit vector, value length is equal to 1. So if I take the norm of it, each of these vectors, I'm going to end up in the length 1 always. So this kind of vectors, what you call unit vectors, they call it. What is unit vector then? Unit vector is a vector with the length or the norm, two norm will be equal to 1. Okay, that's a unit vector. So if the vector length is equal to 1, and with these vectors they form a basis, they form a very powerful, useful basis for the engineers, and they call it as orthonormal basis. Okay, orthonormal basis. Now, what about this signal? What about this particular vectors? Whether are they orthonormal? Can you guess whether it's orthonormal or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this is square root of 1 by square root of 2 the whole square plus 1 by square root of 2 the whole square, you're going to get 1. Okay, 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2, you're going to get 1. Therefore, these are also orthonormal bases. But can you visualize how did we arrive at this particular vector? Can somebody tell me? Is there a connection between these two vectors? 1, 1, 0, 0, 1.
-45 degree angle cos
That's
theta.
all. Very good. Very good. Yeah, very good. You have to see that very clearly. There is a original vector is like this. Okay. Simply rotate this vector. This vector you rotate, and when you rotate this, automatically this also changes. So naturally you are going to end up in something like this. Okay. So this is again orthogonal. So 90 degree will be preserved. So when you are rotating this vector, automatically this also moves. Okay. This angle is 45 degree angle. This angle is 45 degree angle. So naturally you take the original vector and multiply it with what? Cosine and sine. Okay, a matrix like they call it as rotation matrix. Okay, so this is a cosine. So this is cosine. In order to get 1 by square root of 2, you're going to get cosine angle. You have to multiply cosine of 45 degree. Okay, and then sine of 45 degree to multiply the next value. Likewise, this one is cosine sine again. Okay, so you'll be getting the corresponding value. So if you look at this, can you visualize it clearly? What I'm saying? So originally the vector is like this. This is my original vector. Okay. Then what I'm doing? I'm rotating it. I'm rotating it. And I'm going to rotate this vector by an angle 45 degree. What happens? This also will revolve by around the same angle, around by 45 degree. Okay, can you see it now? Okay, this is a kind of rotation I'm talking about. So when you are talking about rotation, what is this value? This value is going to be definitely not 1. Okay, it's going to reduce. So around for 45 degree, whatever value you are going to get, that is 1 by square root of 2. That's what you are applying to cosine. Okay, cos 45 degree is going to be this value, 1 by square root of 2. And then this particular value, y-axis value is going to be 1 by 2, again 1 by square root of 2. And again this one, if you look at this, is negative. That's why you are getting 1 by square root of 2 cosine angle for negative value, this value. And the last one again 1 by square root of 2 y-axis sin theta. Okay, so this is a key idea when it comes to what you call creating new basis vectors apart from your unit vectors 0, 1, 1, 0. You can rotate and you can create new vectors. Okay, so this is also unit. This is orthonormal basis. Okay, same orthonormal. Now the important point now we are going to discuss is any vector, as I told you earlier, any vector V in the real space, two-dimensional space. We call it real two-dimensional space belonging to, can be written as a linear combination of the basis vectors as follows. What is ij here? They are unit vectors 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, ij. So I can take any vector, I can write that vector as a linear combination. Linear combination of what? What is linear combination? I will write it. I'm going to take any vector. It can be a linear combination of 1, 0. Okay, look at this. Plus C2. How do I going to find out this C1, C2? Just to take the inner product of this vector, okay, with this 1, 0. That will fetch you the C1 value. For example, this can be X inner product a dot. Inner product. We put like this inner product, okay, with the first vector 1, 0. Okay, this is inner product. This is inner product I'm talking about. Multiplied by 1, 0. And for the second one, C2, same idea. Plus, again the same inner product, take the vector, 2 vector, inner product, take 0. This is inner product. Multiplied by 0. It's quite obvious for this case. Okay, this case is quite obvious. Why? Primarily because if I'm going to take a vector like 3, 2, what is that value I've taken? Let us take 2, 3. So for 2, 3, if I want to represent it in terms of unit vectors, okay, this is 2, this is 3. The vector is like this. So definitely it is going to take 2 times of 1, 0 and 3 times of 0. That's quite obvious. But this is applicable for other cases also. For other vectors like 1 by square root of 2, 1 by square root of 2 also it is applicable. So that time you will find it extremely interesting to see what kind of results will be there. So for this case, when I apply 2, 3 and take the inner product with 1, 0, I am going to get 2. So the inner product value is going to be 2. Okay, the second case 2, 3 again multiplied with 0, 1, inner product 0, 1. So what do I get? For the first thing, when I take the inner product, element by element I multiply and then add 2 into 1 plus 3 into 0. That's going to be 2. 2 times 1 of 0 plus 2 into 0, 3 into 1. Therefore it is 3. 2 into 0 plus 3 into 1. Okay, therefore 0, 2. So always inner product, it will not fetch you a vector. Keep that in mind. It will give you only a number. Inner product. Therefore 2 and 3, they are the coefficients. Now what I did, I have taken up a number 2, 3 and I am representing it in terms of a basis vector. That means what? It's a linear combination. Linear combination of what? Of basis vectors. What are the basis vectors? 1, 0, 0. Are the basis vectors are orthogonal? Yes. Are the basis vectors are orthonormal? Yes. And what are the coefficients? What kind of combination they are going for? The coefficients are identified by this particular inner product. So this is applicable not only for 2-dimensional data. Okay. When you are operating in 100 dimensions, for example, then what do you get? You will be getting how many vectors? 100 dimensions. Basis vector. E1, E2 up to 100. They are the basis vectors. Okay, and your V, let us take a V vector, is in 100 dimensions. Then we can represent that as C1, E1 plus C2, E2. It goes on up to C100, E100. We'll be having 100 vectors. Okay, and every time, how do you compute C1? Can somebody help me out? C1, C2, how do you compute? How do you compute C1, C2? Take the vector, what else you do? Then multiply it with E1 completely in order to find out C1, inner product. Then take the vector B and take inner product with B2 in order to compute C2. So you understand? So inner product can fetch you the coefficients. Using the coefficients, you can represent your V vector in any dimensions. The dimensions can be 1 million also. 1 million dimensions. 2 dimensions are like this. Vector can be represented. 3 dimensions. Then 4 dimension, 5 dimension. It goes on 1 million dimensions. Imagine this. And on all these dimensions, the same idea is applicable. The same idea of inner product for finding out the coefficients, and E1, E2, they are the basis vectors, and they can be orthonormal basis vectors. After finding out the orthonormal basis vector, we can work out this quite comfortably. If the vectors are not orthonormal, if they are only orthogonal, still you can do this, but with some scaling factors coming into picture. Okay, final result. So you will see that. Okay, so you can do it with orthogonal also. Okay, but the basis vectors can orthogonal also, and you have to do it. So far, any doubt in this particular slide? Is quite important idea. Any doubt? Can I proceed? Alexander, Muralidharan, Nitish, Darshan, anybody? Siddhartha, any doubt? So far? Okay. So now with this idea in mind, now let us view our impulse. Okay, we are not going to view our impulse as a basis. Okay, impulse is a basis. Now what is this form? It's a discrete form. Let us start with this discrete signal. Why it is discrete? It is the signal is existing only at certain instants of time. Okay, not everywhere. So therefore, this is the signal 3, 2, 1. I have sampled my original waveform, continuous time waveform, ended up in like this. Now let us imagine a set of signals, impulse signals. Okay, when k is equal to 0, I am going to get a delta n signal. First signal, which is existing only for n equal to 0. When I put k equal to 1, I am going to get a shifted version. K equal to 2, I am going to get this. K equal to 3, like this. These are all the set of impulses. I am going to call these impulses as a basis vector. And I am going to represent this x of n, okay, my x of n, as a linear combination of this delta n minus 1. Okay, so naturally, whether the signal is existing at minus infinity to plus infinity, okay, I am going to start somewhere down the line. It's going to come at C1, and then what is this? This is a basis, delta n plus 1, C of minus 1. C of 0. They are the coefficients I am interested in finding. How do we get this coefficient? Can somebody help me out? Based on the idea what we have learned in the last slide. How do we get this coefficient?
By calculating the dot product of xn and the impulse actually.
Which particular impulse? So you have so many bags of impulses now. For example, I want to compute
for C1 it's 1.
Very good, very good. You got it. Okay, C of 0, for example, if I want to compute, this k has to be 0. Okay, C of 1, if I want, I'm going to use it only 1. Okay, just like in the previous case, previous idea, what is that? We learned that for each of these, what you call basis vector, I have a set of basis vectors, E1, E2, like that. For each of these basis vector, I am multiplying with taking the dot product with the complete vector V. Okay, that is important. So like that, here what are all my basis vectors? They are going to be delta n minus 1, delta n plus 1, delta n plus 2. Previous, that is with respect to time t equal to minus 2. This is delta n minus 2, t equal to 2. So I have a bag of basis vectors, basis signals. And I am going to represent my x of n, okay, as a linear combination of these vectors. So in order to compute it for one particular coefficient, for example, C1 if I want to take x of n and I have to take the dot product with respect to that particular n equal to 1. Okay, for example, n equal to 1 means n equal to 1, n means delta n minus 1. I want to do it for c minus 1. C minus 1 means this one, x of n dot product delta n plus 1. If I take the dot product. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? Complete vectors. Okay, so if that is the case, what I'll be getting is more like this. So I'm going to take ck. Look at this k. This k is important, this k is important. I want to compute it for c0. Then what do I get? I'm going to take the complete x of n and we will do it for only delta n. K equal to 0. Take the inner product. Okay, so that's more like a summation series. I'm going to do it for the entire thing. So n starts from n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity. In this case, in our particular case, very toy example, only 3 samples. But let us imagine signal starts from minus infinity to plus infinity. Then what do? Take the inner product like this. X of n dot delta n. What is this delta n minus k? K indicates I'm looking at a particular k. So naturally k, if it is going to be 0, it will become like n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n dot delta n. What do I get as output for this case? For c equal to 0 in our problem, n equal to 0, what do I get? K equal to 0. Sorry, k equal to 0, what do I get? I'm going to get only 3. You understand why I'm saying it? Signal, even though the signal exists for 3 instances, if I'm going to multiply it with only delta n, the signal is like this, I'm going to get only 3. Okay, so that's what multiplied with delta n. For all other values are 0. So the same thing I can do it for c equal to 1, c equal to 0, c equal to 2. If I do it, I'll be getting a corresponding x of n signal as a linear combination of intervals. It is nothing but what we have done is stemming from linear algebra only. Simple idea of dot product and basis vectors. So if this idea is extended a bit, okay, and we get a very powerful idea, we can also represent complex exponential also as basis. So naturally, you're going to take x of n, okay, and I'm going to compute the c of omega. This omega is going to be frequencies, omega 1, omega 2, omega 3, up to omega n. Okay, we have got a lot of frequencies. Each signal, e power j omega, e power j omega 1, e power j omega 2, each this omega, that is exponential signal, is more like a basis vector. These two are mutually orthogonal. So naturally, I'm going to represent my signal x of n as a dot product of e power j omega n, and I'm going to add, okay, from n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity in order to compute the dot product. First of all, okay, this is, look at the star. What is the star indicates?
Conjugate.
Conjugate. Okay, it is a complex number. E power j omega n is no more a real number. It's a conjugate. So you have to work out the conjugate in order to do the dot product. So how I am doing it? Sigma n equal to minus plus infinity x of n. Simply I am doing the dot product in order to compute the coefficients. Okay. So now if I want to represent the signal back again in time domain x of n, okay, this is the frequency domain representation. It's called, this expression is called a discrete time frequency transformation. The Fourier transformation, sorry. Discrete time Fourier transformation. This idea is very powerful. Discrete time Fourier transformation. So what we are doing it, I am looking at a signal in time domain, okay, and I am taking the inner product with some complex exponential signals with different frequencies like this. Each frequency is more like a basis vector. Then I will be getting some c omega 1, c omega 2, c omega 3 like that coefficients. They are nothing but inner products, okay, inner products. So that will end up in a signal in a domain called frequency domain. Okay, so that's the expression, this one. So the original signals frequency content, or this is called a kind of spectrum representation. We call it spectrum representation. What is e power j omega? J omega t? j omega t is continuous domain, e power j omega n is discrete domain. What are these signals? They are simply sinusoidal signals, you know them, cos theta plus j sin theta. So naturally, we are trying to represent a waveform, okay, x of n waveform, in terms of some coefficients along with basis signal. Now I pose you a question. If I have all these coefficients and if I multiply it with the corresponding, okay, basis signal and add all those forms, what do I get? What do I get? Take the coefficient c omega 1, c omega 2, c omega 3, all those after computing this inner product. And then coefficients multiplied by the corresponding basis. For example, it is equal to j omega 1. Here. If I add all those coefficients with the corresponding multiplication of the basis vector, what do I get?
Original waveform.
Original x of n waveform is what it is. So do you understand now? When you are taking the inner product, you are moving from time domain to frequency domain. Okay. And when you are adding all the coefficients along with the basis vector, you are moving from frequency domain to time domain. This is a very powerful idea. Look at this. I am just simply adding. Okay. Normally when you are discrete frequency domain, you will be taking frequencies minus pi to pi. Why? Primarily because they have a unique value. Because if you rotate once 2 pi, again if you are rotating, again you will get the same. So naturally, in the discrete frequency domain, you will be operating only between minus pi to pi or 0 to 2 pi. Okay. So if you take for all those frequencies, the coefficients and the basis signal and add all those signals, you are going to end up in this expression. This expression is called as the inverse discrete time Fourier transformation. Like inverse Laplace transformation is like inverse discrete time Fourier transformation. Very powerful. So look at this.
So could you repeat it? Inverse discrete time.
This one, see
yes.
What I said is, see, we have taken the original signal x of n and we have taken the inner product with basis vectors like this, e power j omega, and this omega is going to be the varying factor, therefore omega 1, omega 2, the signal frequency is going to vary. Okay. So for each frequency, I am going to get a basis vector. So I am going to multiply it with each of this x of n. Okay. So in that case, this particular coefficient, for example, what it signifies, for example, c omega 1, if it is more, the value is more, what it signifies? Can somebody tell me? That particular frequency content in the signal will be more. That's the idea. You understand? The c omega 1 is more. It means that particular omega 1, when multiplied with x of n, okay, the orthogonal property, according to the orthogonal property, when you're taking the dot product, okay, you are going to get a good value. Then, if it is negative value, it means what? The angle can be the cosine angle, it can be from 0 to 90 degree, then it's a 90 to 180 degree. Okay, so don't think about it right now. But what I'm saying is the c omega, CW1, CW2, they are nothing but indicators of the particular frequency content present in the original time domain signal x of n. That's the meaning. Then you have taken it and you have identified the coefficients. Now, in order to represent my time domain signal back, what in fact I did in the previous case, the impulse domain, what I did, c of minus 1 delta n plus 1 plus c of 0 delta n. The impulse is what I did. Okay. The same manner, in order to represent my x of n signal, okay, but in the impulse we are in the time domain only, we are not moved to the frequency domain, but here we are moved to frequency domain, c of omega, okay, it will be minus 1, negative frequency also, okay, this can be e power that j omega minus 1, okay, this omega subscript like that you take, okay, this can be c of omega 0, e power omega 0, plus c1, c omega 1, e power j omega 1. You understand the intuitive idea. So both of them, in fact, here, but we have to do it in the continuous domain. So in order to get all those values, we are integrating. Okay, xc of j omega, okay, multiplied with e power j omega n d omega. These are all your omega n values. Omega 1, omega 2 like that. With omega varying between what? Minus pi to plus pi. Because that's for discrete frequency. Every 2 pi it's going to repeat. Okay, then d omega. That's the corresponding domain we are already in. So this kind of representation you call it as the inverse representation, inverse Fourier transformation, inverse discrete. This is a scaling factor. We'll see it later. Okay, it's a scaling factor. 1 by 2 pi also will get. The same manner if I do it in the corresponding continuous domain x of t signal, you get instead of summation here the dot product is going to be an integration like this. Okay, this is x of omega I call it. What is this representation? It's called, can somebody help me out? If this is discrete time Fourier transformation, what is this then?
Continuous time Fourier transformation.
Continuous time Fourier transformation. There is a one-to-one connection you are seeing here. Okay, look at those equations. Okay, all stemming from inner product, orthogonality, orthonormality, scaling factors. That's all from linear algebra background. Okay, x of t equal to omega t dt. So this is inner product. Now, in order to represent instead of c of omega, I want x of t back. What do? Simply do this. Okay, integrate minus infinity plus infinity. X of omega you take. This is what x of omega is. Then d omega integrate it with corresponding basis. Multiply e power j omega, and you will get x. Okay, so this is the idea. Now I will finish off with one more example, with one more idea. That's the Laplace of the Z transformation. Laplace transformation, the same x of t e power minus j omega t, continuous Fourier transformation. What's the only difference? I'm putting an exponential signal inside, a decaying exponential. When I do that, it becomes like this. Then it is nothing but s. E power this alpha plus j omega is nothing but s. I'm going to end up in Laplace transformation. But the same thing, discrete time Fourier transformation. This is a discrete time Fourier transformation. Instead of this x of n, I'm going to multiply it with a decaying exponential discrete waveform, alpha to the power minus n. I'm going to end up in something like this. This is called the Z transformation. So there are totally how many transformations we are learning in your subject? Discrete time Fourier transformation, continuous time Fourier transformation, Laplace transformation, Z transformation. Okay, all four are connected. These two are connected. These two are connected. Only difference is we are going to multiply it with an exponential signal like this, e power minus alpha. Why do we need to do it? That can be easily imagined. If the original x of t is little unbounded, in order to suppress it, okay, you introduce an exponentially decaying signal, you multiply it. If I am going to have an unbounded signal like this, going increasing rapidly, then multiply it with an exponential signal and suppress it. Thereby, you are going to end up with a Laplace transformation. Okay, so that's continuous domain. This is discrete domain. So totally, you can shift gears. Okay, from continuous time domain Fourier transformation to Laplace transformation, then discrete time Fourier transformation to Z transformation. And also we have for periodic waveforms, continuous time we have Fourier series, discrete time Fourier series also. Continuous time Fourier series, discrete. This is these two for non-periodic also. Okay, this is for periodic. So totally there will be 6 different kinds of transformations and mathematics related to it. We are going to see all are easily you can see through connected way. Yeah, what you call a bird's eye view is more coming from orthogonality, inner product, orthonormality, and scaling. That's all from linear algebra. So with this, yeah, any doubts so far? Any doubt? Yeah. Can I stop the lecture? Okay. The idea is clear. Is there some doubts in it? Please ask. Okay. We will discuss it. It's an important idea.